I'm making a video this morning in honor of my son's opening, Raymond King Shurtz is his name, opening his one-man show, Bohemian Cowboy, in Austin, Texas, Tuesday. Oh, I'm proud of that boy. But anyway, I thought that in this video I would talk about his father, my ex-husband, since this show is about the disappearing of his father into the desert.
What's the name of the show?
Bohemian Cowboy. Now, Bohemian Cowboy is my son, and it's his reaction to his father's disappearance and the memories it calls up. Because at the time, he was taking care of of Dean, his father, during the winter months, most winters. And he was scheduled to take care of him the winter he disappeared, but he had to have hip surgery, which apparently didn't make my ex-husband too happy because it forced him to stay up in Utah, and he had to leave Boulder, where he always lived, and go to his sister's place, where he didn't like that place, he didn't know it, and so he just about when my son was scheduling his hip surgery, his father did one of his disappearances. Now, this was the first time that my ex had disappeared, but he always turned up before. You know, he would just, I think it was entertaining to him. What do you think? When things were kind of dull, you know,
Yes, I like to be able to disappear for weeks on end, you know, and then show up and say, "Did you miss me, honey?"
Well, yeah, because, well, the first time he ever disappeared was when we were in Salt Lake. He was working at a job he didn't really like, whatever he could get, carpet cleaning. And so one night he went downtown and he never came home. He said he was just going to stop in for a beer. Well, I just couldn't imagine. I called all the hospitals. I pictured him in a terrible wreck. He didn't come home that day, that night, and he didn't come home all the next day. And then in the evening, he strolled in. And I said, "Where have you been?" And, well, you know, he said that he just didn't really explain why he, but he did tell me that, I hate to say this, but he had met a lady, and then he said, please forgive me, me. And I said, he'd met a lady and spent the evening and the night, I guess, with her.
Well, look at the good side of it, okay?
But he was a very honest guy.
No,
he had confessed as soon as he got home.
If he did come home and said, "I met a guy last night," throws a whole different attitude
he
about
was
it, right?
not like that, but I was not too happy with this. And he begged me to forgive him. He wouldn't stop begging me until I finally had to swallow my rage and decide to get even with him later and say, yes, I forgive you. So he could.
I can hardly wait for this story. This one's going to be a pip.
Well, I did get even with him, I'm sure, in some ways. But boy, well, by the time he got to my son's care, he had refined disappearing to a fine art. I mean, I remember about 10 years before he actually disappeared and didn't ever come back, or
when did he actually disappear? A lot of these people don't know that.
Well, he disappeared 4 years ago, right in this month. And he disappeared above Las Vegas in the Valley of Fire.
They found found his pickup truck, but they didn't find him.
No, they didn't find him. Well, I know as a matter of fact that if he got his truck stuck, all four wheels, which he did, he would have been so upset because he took stuff like that really hard, and he would have. And apparently, you know, we kind of thought that he'd go in these fugue states when he'd get into a rage, you know, over something happening, and because when he'd come back out of them, he'd say he didn't remember. He didn't remember. Well, Anyway,
you're going to use those big words. I don't know.
Well, a fugue. I think that's a good word for what I saw him do. It's a kind of mental state where, because time and time again,
with temporary amnesia.
Especially when he'd do something, he'd get drunk and be real upset. He would always claim he couldn't remember a thing, which I never, I didn't believe that. I said, oh, you just don't want to remember you.
No, wait, it works for me. I don't know what your problem is.
Well, I guess
your problem is
alcoholics.
Your problem is she doesn't drink, so therefore she can't blame that on temporary.
Whatever I do.
I drank a little too much, and I don't remember.
No, I don't remember.
See, she doesn't
anything.
drink, so you have to forget that part.
Well,
you have to make it.
I wasn't buying it. I said, oh, you just don't want to remember, and I went ahead and punished him anyway, for whatever it was, because it would usually be something terrible.
Well, what's the punishment?
Well,
what was the punishment? I want to know the punishment.
Oh.
Did you hurt him?
Yeah.
Did you whip him?
This man, he's always kind of shocking me anyway with what he would do. Like, he got drunk one time.
Did he have a cattle prod or anything like that?
He drank wine, and I thought, well, wine has sent him crazy. And so he pulled the Venetian blinds down. So I called the police because I was a little bit scared of him by that point. The police came, and I was totally shocked at what he did. Totally shocked. The room was full of cops, and he says to me, he laid his hand over on the cop's gun in its holster and said, I'm coming back with one of those and get you. And I was like, the cops were like, what have we got here? What kind of guy? And then they went outside, and I was looking at him, taking him down the street, and all of a sudden, my ex broke away from him and went bounding off into jumping over hedges, and I thought, my God, he's going to get himself killed. The damn fool! And they were chasing him, and then they come back to me and they said, ma'am, you certainly did right to call the cops, because he's been up there calling us names and kicking the walls for 5 hours. 5 hours he was calling the cops names. Who wouldn't want to do that sometime in their life? Well, he did it.
And
I thought, oh, they're going to bury him. They are not going to let him out, ever. Well, the next day, my ex-husband was sober. He was so nice. He didn't claim, of course, he didn't remember a thing. And the cops were all sympathetic, and they let him out. They were going to keep him a week, and they just let him out. So this nice guy could go back to work. And of course he wasn't dangerous anymore, so I let him back home, but I thought to myself, this guy, Well, I remember about 10 years before he actually disappeared, my son and his daughters, well, my son, he had disappeared. And he was been gone for 10 days. They had no idea where he was. It was in the big city, so they were worried. And my son and his daughters. Well, my son was driven to going around in all the bars and eating places where he disappeared and saying, have you seen this man?
Is that the
with a big
one?
picture. No, that was Raymond. No, my older son had just kind of remained indifferent. But Raymond would go around saying, have you seen this man? Well, nobody'd seen him.
Doesn't have any daughters?
No, Dean does. Dean's daughters.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry, folks.
Yes, Dean's daughter. And so when he called up, he said, well, I just found my daughter's phone number, so, and seems he had been living in a motel while they were hunting for him. So you see, he was a surprising guy that way. And then another time my son was had him, in his custody. Well, not his custody. They were living together, and my son was doing a play, and naturally, right at the last.
This is the one that's the Bohemian Cowboy.
The Bohemian Cowboy was doing the play, and Raymond was very busy, and he said, Mom, he always does this when I'm so busy I can't even look around. Yes, he disappeared. I said, well, where is he? Well, we didn't hear for a week until my sister up in Utah called up and said, Dean is